So welcome back everyone. We hope you all are energized and excited for the next session, which is on the wish list of business, do realities derail aspirations? With obstacles in the way of smooth conduct of business, corporate chieftains often play the what-if game. Do they have a wish list and is it practicable of implementation? Let me introduce our panelists, Mr. Pieter Elbers, who is the CEO of India's largest domestic airline, InterGlobe Aviation, IndiGo, since September 2022. He is an airline business leader with over 30 years of aviation experience. Prior to joining IndiGo, he was the president and CEO of KLM Royal Dutch Airlines for 8 years. In his 30-year career at KLM, he has held a number of important positions in different geographies. He was KLM's Chief Operating Officer from 2011 to 2014. When he was appointed as CEO during this time, he was also an executive, the Air France KLM Group. He currently serves on the ITA Board of Governors and has been elected as its chairperson since June 2024. Mr. Elbers, ladies and gentlemen. Our next panelist is Mr. Subramanian Sarma. He is the Deputy Managing Director and President of L&T Group. He is responsible for the energy portfolio comprising hydrocarbon onshore and offshore, carbon light solutions, green and clean energy, asset management, and offshore wind business. He is also a member of the board of Larsen and Toubro and the chair of EHS Council and the Quality Council. He has over 44 years of experience in project EPC business at various levels. He has over 44 years of experience in project EPC business at various levels, with 30 years being in the Middle East. Mr. Sarma, ladies and gentlemen. And our moderator for the session is Mr. Damodaran. Over to you, sir.
So welcome back. I hope all of you have had tea and coffee because it's useful. You're going to get to a session where a lot of tea and coffee and other such stimulants are required for business to do well in the days ahead. Right? We intended to have 3 panelists. 3 is my lucky number. One of them was Mr. Narendran, CEO of Tata Steel. But I mentioned to you in the context of Nagaraju not being here in the morning that the state was responsible. Today it's a private sector that's responsible. He's got another meeting scheduled which he couldn't get out of. And corporate sector, I think, is less forgiving than government is. Government occasionally forgives such transgressions like leaving scheduled meetings. Here there was an unscheduled meeting which got into the way. So what we will do to take advantage of the situation, and I've already mentioned to Pieter and to Mr. Sarma, is that we will then try and save some time. Because I understand businesses don't have very long wish lists. The reason for scheduling this as the first session after the session with regulators in the morning was so that we could get a perspective from business leaders on what is it that is standing in their way, what is it that is standing in the way of their companies from doing better than they're doing at this point of time. They're all doing very well, but I'm sure they would be the first to admit that they can do a lot more, they can do a lot better. Now, some of it could be because the regulations, as Mr. Kant told us a little while ago, there are too many, they're getting in the way of the conduct of business, they're expensive, etc. Then there are other issues which impact business adversely. You want a lot of good people to work with you. Is there an adequate supply of good people, the right kind of people that you want in a competitive environment? Where do you source them? Having got them, how do you hold on to them in a very competitive environment? That could be another set of issues. But I don't want to anticipate what they're going to say. They are the people that are leading the businesses. Mr. Sarma is the Deputy Managing Director of Larsen and Toubro, and I have been on that board for several years till I became a little less young than I would like to be, and therefore time caught up with me and I had to exit from the board. But in that period, I have seen how one transformative leader can change everything. Hydrocarbon was L&T's Achilles heel. It was a drag. It was doing badly. It was finding it difficult to carve out its space, especially outside of India. There were huge issues. And then I'm taking a sentence out of Nehru's discovery of India. He has a one-sentence paragraph which says, and then Gandhi came. So as far as L&T's hydrocarbon is concerned, and then Sharma came. The rest is history, because today all the huge orders that L&T gets are in hydrocarbons. The really big ones. They get other big orders, but he gets the bigger ones and in very, very competitive environments. As for Pieter, I'm sure many of you fly IndiGo, many of you are outstationed. I know I have flown into Mumbai last night and today through IndiGo, because there's another carrier that India has. I'm not talking about it now, but if you want to reach a meeting in time, I don't know whether you would come by that carrier. So he runs that airline, and what he's done, and I sit on the board and I say this, we have a couple of other colleagues from the board here, and I say this, I have not seen such accurate attention to detail, meticulous, uncompromising, and if I may say so, I'm not revealing a state secret, I'll say this and stop, and the ability and the willingness to challenge the board. Not he's smiling. Not something that you see often in Indian boards. People don't challenge the boards. I've seen that up close, so I'm able to tell you that it's a perfect way in which the board and the management extract value from each other. You get to see on the IndiGo board. Now, what I'm going to do is to ask them a few hopefully short questions. I am not India's celebrated television anchor, so my questions will not be longer than the answers, hopefully. But I want to start by asking Pieter, if you were writing on a clean slate, you were told, okay, this is the airline, run it. No one from the outside is telling you what you should do. What would you do differently? What would you do better?
I was prepared for a lot of questions, but perhaps not this one, Mr. Damodaran. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me, and congratulations with 10 years of this wonderful event. By the way, this is also 10 years that InterGlobe went for IPO and is listed, so I guess
yes,
it kind of coincides with 10 years on.
Though I must tell you, we didn't plan it that way. So.
I know, but still I think it's good to highlight. So I was wondering, what am I doing here actually today? And I guess that's the correlation between the two. You know, I think when it comes to airlines, there's a specific set of regulations and a specific set of governance which has to be there, and obviously whatever it has to come to safety oversight and regulatory oversight is incredibly important, and that has to be there. So I don't think there would be much different, but perhaps where to build on, and listening to the start of the day and the excellent presentations both by Mr. Pandey and Mr. Kant. Let me build on what Mr. Kant was saying. If you were to move India from a 4 trillion economy to a 30 trillion economy, I guess the big challenge will be how to keep regulation up to that. And next to the size issue, which was so well elaborated today morning by Mr. Kant, I would say there's two other dimensions which I would kind of put as input for any governance or regulation discussion. One is the further internationalization, and that applies to IndiGo, but I guess that applies to a lot of Indian companies who used to be extremely sizable domestic and now are increasingly entering the international space. And entering the international space would also require us to find a proper balance between what to do in terms of domestic Indian regulatory framework and what to do outside. That is one. In addition to the scale is the internationalization. Second topic, I guess, is a lot of things which are totally new today, which were not there 5 to 10 years ago, and cyber was mentioned today morning. I think all the regulatory frameworks around cyber, digital space, that is basically inventing the wheel as we go forward. And I think a certain set of prudence, and I think Mr. Kant was referring, whenever a new rule is being introduced, old ones should be either abolished or changed. I think especially on that field, there's more work to be done going forward. So in addition to the scaling, I would say the international part, and secondly, the new elements such as cyber, but ESG also being one, are to be addressed in a very pragmatic way.
So, Mr. Sarma, one of the problems that people face, infrastructure certainly faces it, is lack of continuity, clarity, and certainty in policies. You cannot bet that one policy which is in place today will continue till foreseeable future. Somebody will tinker with it, somebody will change it. If you look at roads, for example, that is something which has been happening regularly. I'm not getting into the shipping space, which again gets into problems because of policy discontinuity, if I may call it that. Is that one of the problems that Indian businesses face? Lack of clarity, continuity, knee-jerk reactions to single episodes, rewriting regulations and laws to address one transgression, whereas it would have been easier to fix the offender. Instead, we write a regulation. Is that a problem?
Okay, good morning, and thank you, Mr. Damodaran, for that nice introduction, and also for inviting me. I'm very privileged to be here in this distinguished gathering. I'll go back to the very basics theme you have chosen before I answer that question, because when I read it for the first time, maybe it's very controversial, my views about this. But when I read that question in the first instance, I thought that why is that even a question? Because in my view, I think the aspirations and realities do not compete with each other. They kind of coexist, but they coexist in a very different time scale. When we talk about aspiration, it's a very long-term view. You're kind of combination of your ambitions, dreams, manifesting into a business vision, where the realities are something which you experience every day, and it's a short-term, truth which businesses face, and it is supposed to test and shape and help you regulate and correct your course on the journey towards your aspiration. That's the way I see it. In a growing economy, you will still face a lot of issues on day-to-day from a regulatory requirement, from the market environment and market aspects, and so many other aspects. Even when you go international, we face those issues. Now, do we see them as an obstacle, or do we see them as a challenge and help build the organization to become more resilient and more stronger, keeping the long-term view? So I think that's the way I take. There will be challenges because we are definitely a growing economy. Everything is not going to be right every day. But I think as long as there is a dialogue and forums like this where we can freely exchange our views and have discussion with the policymakers and regulators, and there is a continuous improvement, I think we should accept that as part of the business.
Pieter, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, when you mention infrastructure, clearly and perhaps not everyone is fully aware of that, but the two large Indian airlines, us and the other one, together hold the world's largest order book in terms of planes. So if we look to the number of aircraft being ordered by India, that requires billions and billions of investments, and those billions and billions of investments were to be operated from airports and from infrastructure. So a long-term perspective on what to expect, not only on the physical infrastructure, the concrete on the ground and towers and runways and terminals, but very much so on the policy side as well, I think is an incredibly important aspect. And it was mentioned by Mr. Khan today morning, the predictability of policies and predictability of business climate. You know, if you, and IndiGo, let me speak on IndiGo and not on the other ones, we hold today an order book for over 800 narrow-body aircraft and 60 wide-body. So 800 narrow-body aircraft are going to operate out of India by IndiGo. So if you have that order book translated of 800 plus aircraft into billions of investments, clearly the number of airports and the infrastructure of the airports has to grow. But equally important and often forgotten is what are the policies related to that and how to make sure that you have a predictable environment to justify to your shareholders really how you're going to spend all these billions of dollars in investing in planes in order to have the part of the economic growth. If you go from 4 trillion to 30 trillion, clearly mobility is an incredibly important part of that. The predictability of policies there is a crucial element.
You remind me of something which goes back several years. I was in the US interacting with a bunch of chief executives. And one of the questions that was put to me was, I'm talking about several years ago, one of the questions put to me was that you're allowing a lot of airlines to come in, but where are the airports? Where will the flights land? I said, don't worry about it. Our track record is excellent in this. After your aircraft are airborne, we will ensure that we take up the construction and we will complete it before your aircraft land. We do everything at the last minute, so we will get it done, I told him. But you're absolutely right. With 860 and counting, because there are hopefully more orders in the pipeline, where will these aircraft land? Of course, there are people who are going to travel anyway. But I want to ask Mr. Sarma another question. Is there a level playing field in business, private sector and government? Or does ownership translate to an unfair advantage?
Well, I think the answer is no. I mean, there are many places where we have level playing field, but there are certain areas or segments where we find that we are facing some unequal or non-peer competition. But again, I mean, like you can take a very negative view of it, or you can say that, yes, I mean, the government and the investors or developers are also looking for more competitive solutions. And sometimes in certain spaces when you have a dominant player like L&T, I mean, they also want to create competition. And sometimes they provide opportunities for those who are not yet ready to face that competition. So in that case, you get this unequal competition. Again, I mean, like I said, I mean, you have to have more players if you have to build this to a 30 trillion economy. I mean, one L&T is not enough, right? I mean, I'm very proud that if we can do it all by ourselves, but the reality is that we will not be able to do it. So we'll need more players, we need more L&T. So we'll have to give some more opportunities for others also to, but I think there are maybe better ways of handling that. I mean, I think I agree that it can be like we had proposed to the policymakers that we should have tier-based systems, like you have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 contractors, or whichever way. I mean, like tier 1 if it's the highest, then tier 2 and tier 3. Allow people to more opportunities in tier 3 once they learn and they become proficient, then they move to tier 2 and then to tier 1. So over a period of time, you can create more capacity and more competitors. But to somebody to jump into tier 1 straight away looks very unfair. But I think there is a room for improvement there. Let me put it that way.
No, just a follow-up question to you, which is L&T's legitimate claim, proud claim over the years has been, we make the things which make India proud, right? How will you make India prouder? What will you do? Will you do newer things? Will you do bigger things, larger orders, new geographies? What will you do?
I mean, see, firstly, I think it has to be very aligned to the country's goal. I mean, we have to do what is required for the country, I mean, to make that as a developed economy. In my view, there are several sectors and segments we need to work upon. One is how do we bring the technology and innovation into what we do. I mean, neighboring countries, particularly one, have, I think in my view, have gone ahead of us. I mean, I think there is an opportunity with the talent, great talent pool we have for us to go more into applied sciences and research and development and create more innovation. The skill availability for the growth we need to have, I heard about 9% CAGR. I mean, that's quite massive. I mean, 9% growth. I mean, the kind of skill we need for that, we need to have a massive improvement in the productivity that can come through skill training, that can come through automation, that can, again, coming through latest AI-based technology like humanoids, etc. We need to have more collaboration with some of the best institutes we have, the IITs and the other universities, to see how we can have public and academic institute collaborating more to develop some new technologies and things like that. And also bring, I mean, we are one of the companies where we have a huge learning from the international practices. How do we bring that and apply those in our country? And where we get that, what you call the fair premium, because when you bring those learnings, you cannot be just comparing on lowest cost. So you'll have to have some kind of way to recognize that value we bring, and how do we change that policy and bring that. So I mean, these are the 4 or 5 things we need to do.
Which leads me to a question to Pieter. You have run an airline outside of India, in Europe. You have been now running an airline for some years in India. What, if any, are the differences? Are there, following up on what Sarma said, are there learnings for us from what you have experienced outside?
And thank you for bringing that question. I think one of the elements is the connectivity, if you wish, between building an entire ecosystem of connected relations, and education was mentioned here as one. But I would say maintenance, engineering, developing capabilities in the country has so far been done in perhaps more separate initiatives rather than a cohesive and integrated effort. I think one of the learnings at some other parts of the world is whenever it comes to building up an ecosystem, you need the educational side, and I guess there's no country better positioned in the world than India when it comes to that pool of talent and the abundance of people excited to work, willing to learn, wanting to move forward. So that is an incredible asset. And that should help us to have more production capabilities in India. And when you look, for example, at aircraft maintenance, a very significant part of that aircraft maintenance is taking place outside India. And that perhaps was a logic trend when the country was having 300 to 400 aircraft. Today there's around 800 aircraft in the country, and in 5 years from now that number is going to double. So if you just look to some of those dimensions, education is one of them, training is another one of them, production capabilities is another one. So if you make like a cohesive effort, and I'm not sure if Europe is the best example, but if we look to what's happening in other parts of the world, Middle East or even Southeast Asia, I think there's a lot of learnings to be done, how you can integrate the system and how you can connect the dots in terms of what I always call hardware. The physical infrastructure, airports, runways, terminals, etc. Software, the people, and thirdly, the regulatory framework. And I think that's where the 3 dots are coming together of hardware, software, and regulatory framework. And the opportunity I think we have in India today is a lot of the initiatives have started. The ambition towards 2047 is very clear. And I would say if we're able to connect the dots and building up those facilities, the opportunity is massive. And I see a lot of these initiatives, I think if we can have policies and regulation in place actually helping and supporting these initiatives, then the opportunity will not only be an opportunity in paper, but also an opportunity in reality. And I think whatever we have done over the past few years when it comes to aviation has been extremely helpful and extremely productive. But just to double in size, I mean, IndiGo today, and again, I'm not sure if everyone is aware of that, it's the 7th largest airline in the world in terms of daily flights. But when you look at that, a very significant part, around 80% of those flights, is all domestic, and only 20% international. And the further you go away from India, the lower the market share of Indian operators is. So the opportunity to bring back a lot of that work and a lot of that business actually related to that internationalization here in India is an enormous opportunity. And I think the opportunity there also is the rest of the world is challenged with shortage of labor, all kind of other sort of factors which are preventing growth. We're not having a shortage of labor. We have an abundance of talent. We are running some of the best IT infrastructures in the world. But to have it run as an orchestrated setting, or perhaps a cricket team, that I think would allow us to really move the needle forward.
Are you being consulted in policy formulation, or is there a way in which the insights that industry has gets captured in the policy formulation process, or are you coming later into the day? Amitabh mentioned in the morning that, it's only at a late stage that the consultation process kicks in, not at the time when your ideas are formed, your concepts are examined. You have something called a working paper and then say, please comment on it. Is there some way to move that consultation process up front, and are the existing fora adequate for a consultative process? Both of you can take this. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot to do in that space, in my view, because mostly it is now coming from the industry side. We go and make our representation. But I would say that there should be a more structured process of having that interaction. I mean, I think what I have seen in some of the developed countries, like if you go to UK or US, I mean, the business and the government exchange is much more informal and also more structured. And here, I think it's a little bit more reactive. So we can make it more proactive. We can have more structured program, and there are forums where we get opportunity to interact. But I think in a collective way, to sit down and have a good sort of brainstorming sessions or ideation sessions is not happening. I mean, I think sometimes people approach individually. Sometimes they have their own agendas. It could be also be conflicting. So I think there has to be a more structured process for sure.
Yeah, perhaps building on that. Indeed, this was one of the 5 things, if I paid proper attention to Mr. Kant, one of the 5 things mentioned. Yes. In terms of, where in the process are you stepping in? Clearly, again, for aviation, that's the only business I know, but I guess it will also come in some other businesses. It's by definition a long-term trajectory. So by combining the collective efforts of all the parties in that value chain or in that ecosystem is I would say really an opportunity to do. And from our side, we would only encourage such initiatives and be ready to participate in any of these initiatives. Say, let's draw the map how the aviation landscape in India would look in 10 years from now. And what exactly do we need from there in terms of policy, in terms of framework, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of airspace, in terms of all these different elements. And I guess we will be getting there. Most important, I would say, is the ambition on top of that. And that's been very, very explicitly mentioned by the government in general and the Honorable Prime Minister in particular, who very explicitly stated this is the direction, if this is the direction for the Indian economy, this is what aviation as a role plays into that. I think where the challenge is, how do you translate such a vision and ambition into what are the tangible and realistic measures? And I think now we have the opportunity to start building that collectively going forward.
So let me ask you a provocative question. You said the intent is right, everybody is saying the right things, and we're fairly clear where we want to be after a few years. Is the pace a little leisurely?
I wouldn't call it leisurely. I would say that the reality of growth is sometimes quicker than the reality of adjustment.
Okay. This is how you run a no-frills airline. Just say the right things. Don't say too much. Sharma, any thoughts on that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, leisurely is maybe a too sort of harsh word. I think, but there is.
No, I didn't say lazily, leisurely. Yeah. Okay.
So I think sometimes you have to understand the constraints from both sides. I mean, I think there are good elements and not so good elements in a growing economy. So the checks and balances which has been put by the policymakers is also necessary to make sure that everybody is aligned. But I think we have a big task in front of us. I mean, and to grow this into a 30 trillion economy, we need to move fast and faster. And I think collaboration between government and the industry and everyone, all stakeholders, if we can find a right forum to discuss and deliberate, I think that will be much better. I think, yeah.
I want to throw it open to the audience. I want more audience questions. Last session was with regulators, etc., making speeches, but this is as much your program as it is ours. So we'll take a few questions and we'll conclude this before time. Who wants to get started? Please identify yourself and then ask the question and make it a question. All of us can make speeches in this. I think we will avoid the speech-making tendency. Can somebody give him a mic, please?
This one is not a regulatory question, but more a business question.
First, identify yourself for the record. I know who you are, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Viswanathan, Independent Director at SDB Financial Services. This question is not about regulation, but about business. Especially you talked about education and talent, unlimited talent. But I don't see an educational policy that's producing talent at the speed at which the businesses want, that's not getting addressed very effectively. I know there's government doing something, private sector doing something, but I don't think this country can get to the 30 trillion unless there's something significantly different happening in the education. Any thoughts, please?
Any thoughts?
But I fully agree with that. I mean, because I think we are, to be honest, what the policies we are running, the system we are running in our schools and colleges are a little bit outdated with respect to what we need today. Particularly now with new technologies such as AI, I mean, I think the skilling and reskilling and need to learn fast and need to learn multiple things is becoming very increasing. So we'll have to move away from kind of a rota system to maybe more practical application-oriented learning and starting from school. So there is definitely a need for a reform there in that space, and that's my view.
Pieter?
Well, perhaps to build on this and what I shared earlier, I think there's a great opportunity for a lot of public-private partnerships. And, you know, we hire thousands of new mechanics and engineers every year. And the way how I see it, they're sort of government schools and programs trained, and then we further groom them and have apprentices programs and stuff like that to get them in. So when it comes to the digital age, yes, I guess that's a struggle for a lot of countries in the world, by the way, not unique to India. I know from a fact, a lot of European countries are challenging with that reality of technology changing much faster than policies. I think the way to address it, and larger companies clearly can, and to my humble view, should have a role in that, is these public-private partnerships when it comes to part of the foundation is being done by the government, and then companies can sort of put some programs on top of that to bring it to practical and immediately applicable practices in the marketplace.
Any? I brought two industry leaders here. Now, please ask them questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sanjay Sinha. I'm founder of an entity called Citrus Advisors. Can I just turn the subject the other way around? In the sense, can aspirations create realities for India? In the sense, if we already have an aspiration to be a $30 trillion economy, Can that aspiration be converted into some realities in today's context? And why do I say that? If you look at the telecom sector in India, we could have never imagined that the telecom revolution in India could reach to a level where we would be the cheapest country in the world as far as the price of data is concerned. We would be one country where every Indian today owns a smartphone. So my question is the other way around. If this aspiration is already in place, that we need to be a 30 trillion economy, what realities should we now put into place? And I think with specific reference to aviation, can we do something where the aspiration sets into place the reality?
Yeah, thank you. I think it is happening to some extent. And again, taking the example of IndiGo, IndiGo is only this year will turn 20, or actually in 26 will turn 20. So it's a young company in the aviation space, and the startup phase were very old, in the aviation space were very young. And, you know, on the market only for 10 years, and yet that has propelled us to be the 7th largest airline in the world in terms of daily flights. We welcome every day 3.5 lakh customers on a daily basis. So that gives a size of the scale. I think where the challenge is going to be is to bring it into a global scale. And I think that's perhaps where some parallels with telecom are. To be successful in India, you need to be extremely cost effective and extremely agile. And I think these two elements in the little over 3 years that I'm living here, I've figured out cost leadership and agility are two crucial factors. I think the moment you can apply that on a global scale, you have a great opportunity to further build on that. So when you talk about can we turn that aspiration into reality, I think it is happening. Again, looking at IndiGo, we moved from 20 international destinations to 45 just in 3 years' time. And we kind of tripled our market share when it comes to international operations. I think where the real challenge is how to connect all the different dots in that ecosystem. And especially in this field, it is as strong as the weakest link in that ecosystem. And some other parts of the world that's orchestrated by sort of one conductor bringing all the parties together. Given the size and the scale of India, obviously it's much more complicated than some other parts of the world. But the opportunity clearly is there. So I think the aspiration is being turned into reality, but it will not materialize itself just by itself. There's going to be more needed to get that done. And I think we do have all the ingredients in-house. We do have all the building blocks in-house. But the building blocks will just remain building blocks if they're not connected in the right way.
So actually, just from my side, I 100% agree that aspirations can be converted into realities. I mean, the other example is the solar energy. I mean, I think Honorable Prime Minister and the policymakers set a target that we want to become one of the largest solar generators. And I think what we have achieved in the last 5 years or so, or 6-7 years, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I think we are one of the fastest growing generators of solar energy, and so I think we are coming up with the battery storage, I mean, the energy storage systems, not necessarily battery, but energy storage system. That's one area. I think the second one is also how we have pursued our aspirational target for sustainability into reality is the kind of penetration we are seeing in electric vehicles. I mean, this is also something which we should be proud of. I mean, now you see a lot more electric vehicles. I mean, people were talking about the charging station, the constraints, but I think it's moving. It's moving quite rapidly compared to other places. So there are many examples where the aspirations convert into realities. But like I said in my opening remark, they coexist. I mean, I don't think we can separate them out. I mean, you need aspirations to convert into realities, and you need realities as a feedback loop to achieve your aspirations, because otherwise they will remain fantasies. I mean, if you want to convert fantasies into foresight and good plan, then it has to be connected to the reality.
Yes.
Yeah. My name is Michael Pinto. I had spent a long time with the government. I am conscious of what you said, that there should be a question and not a speech. I'm also conscious that you've really asked this question already, but I don't think we've gone deeply enough into it. This is the changing system that you have. We said we don't have permanency in policy. If you remember, many years ago, we had a company called Enron. They were to set up a plant here. The whole thing was done. Everything was signed and sealed. The government changed, and the government said, no, we are going to cancel it. I remember at that time advising the government very clearly, saying, don't do this, because if you have come in as a new government and you cancel something, who is going to believe you? If you get a new project, tomorrow you might cancel it. Now, this is not restricted to domestic policy. In the last administration in the US, we were told, buy Russian oil, because if you don't do it, then the price is going to go up, and we don't want that. Now we are being penalized for that. Now, when you have this amount of insecurity, both in domestic policy and in international policy, and it is to some extent the effect of democracy, how do companies cope with this? As I said, I'm aware you covered this, but I thought we should look into it a little more deeply.
It is a big challenge because, like, think you spoke about Enron, but our practical experience also has been in state government. I mean, in Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, before it split into Andhra and Telangana, I mean, there are a lot of projects awarded, and when the new state government put in place and they cancelled all the projects, I mean, not only affected the domestic players, but it also affected the international players. I mean, those kind of things definitely is a big deterrent. I mean, it will not encourage the foreign investors to come and invest, because they see that every 4 years or 5 years, if the policies are going to change, then there's not going to be much incentive for them to come. So I think we'll have to put some ground rules. I mean, like, of course, democracy is good, and every government has their freedom to pursue their goals. But I think things which have been decided by the previous government should continue. I mean, I think that something is unwritten, but it should be made maybe more formal to bring that predictability. Second thing is about this controversial thing about retrospective versus perspective. I mean, this direction, I think we had that problem of retrospective tax, which created a huge amount of uncertainty. So there are a few things which we can quickly fix. There are low-hanging fruits. It just requires a certain amount of deliberation and commitment. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, I think we are moving in the right direction.
There is an instrument available, which is, if we understand our concepts right, that government and ministry are two different things. Ministries come and go, the government is a continuity. So if one government is a signatory to a policy or a contract or whatever, somebody else coming in as a result of elections, changed political circumstances, constituting another ministry, cannot automatically negate what the government of the day has done. Because it's the government that has contracted, not the ministry. And if our courts can actually enforce that, to say that a government which was in position is the one that signed, and it doesn't matter, ministries come and go. In fact, I am very sensitive to this thing about people saying, when our government was in power, I said the government is nobody's, not yours, not mine. There is a government of India which exists, which has always existed. You came into a position of responsibility, not power. When we were in power, and that somehow grates when you hear it, when we were in power, what power? We didn't give you power, we gave you responsibility to look after us, right? But that continuity of policy, of decision making, and it's not an Indian phenomenon. We saw in Mauritius what happened when there was a change of political thing. They scrapped the airport contract, then he had to go to court and get it revived. That court was sensible. It said, since government is a party, we will force them to honor it. But I'm not seeing our court saying the same thing. Andhra Pradesh, a great example, change in political fortunes, and suddenly all projects having come to a grinding halt. Any other questions, please? Yes. Mic is getting to you, Aparna. Yeah.
My name is Aparna Sharma. We are in the age of AI, right? Nobody this morning has talked about it. So the question is around, is AI an uninterrupted ally on your wish list for your industry? Or in certain aspects, do you see it as a derailer?
No,
In
as
your
far as my
industry?
our industry is concerned, we see it as a strong ally. I think it has to be seen as an enabler and enabling agent. As we speak, within L&T, we are writing about close to 150 algorithms, which will help us in performing our activities in a more efficient way, more faster way, and that will be a continuous process. I do not think it will be a derailer. I mean, I think it's going to be definitely some coexist along with the organizations and human beings. That's the way we see it, and we'll have to see how things unfold. But that's our belief.
In Pieter's universe, AI is another airline. But, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
But I'm not here to talk about that one. No,
You can expand it, say artificial intelligence. Yeah, right. Yeah.
I will just reconfirm what Chairman said. I think it's a huge enabler. It will enable us to accelerate, to have quick analysis, to have better comparison between the framework. I think some of the elements mentioned in governance it takes some time to fully grasp it, if ever. And I had the privilege of, when I joined India a couple of years back, to get a brief education from Mr. Damodaran on how Indian governance looked like. I'm not sure if I came out more enlightened or more confused. But surely AI there will help you to have a proper understanding and a proper comparison. So clearly an ally. And I think some of the things which were mentioned today earlier, and let me come back on that. I think scaling the Indian economy is one of the challenges. Diversifying it and making it more international is another challenge, which would simply force us to compare domestic regulations and governance to international ones. And the third one, which I mentioned, but perhaps not clear enough, was all kind of new elements which were coming. I mentioned cyber and I mentioned ESG, and clearly AI should be part of that one as well. So I think those elements would clearly bring it back as an opportunity, but something which will also force us to accelerate some of the revisions and some of the changes being made.
We'll take two more questions.
I think also just to
Yeah,
add,
go ahead. Yeah.
the AI should really boost the productivity. I mean, I think that's something which is very important for us. If you want to fast track our aspiration to become a 30 trillion or a developed economy, we need a big booster to improve our productivity across the board, across the segments. And I think AI is, in my view, I find that as a big opportunity, which will empower as well as help us to fast track entire development.
Perhaps to build on that, I think Mr. Kant mentioned 3 countries, Japan, Korea, and China, who achieved that. To my observation, they have achieved it by an enormous jump in productivity.
Yeah, productivity.
Other countries who did not have the same growth had a different trajectory of productivity. They achieved wonderful and phenomenal growth, but not per se the same productivity as what happened there. So the productivity jump is going to be the crucial factor to my view in that.
Okay, 2 more questions.
Good.
I don't see any hands going up. Are we saying that we have no more questions to ask of Indian businesses? I like it. I've never been a school teacher, but now I will have to ask people, don't you have any questions?
That's fine.
Okay. Then I think it's like the DRS system. If by the count of 15 or whatever you don't review the decision, your time is out, right? So by countdown, yeah, sorry. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
First of all, Mr. Damodaran, thank you I'm Air Chief Marshal Dhanoa. I retired from the Air Force in 2019. And 41 years with the government and just about 5 years with the corporate world. So I'm more of a, you can say, I've seen the thing from the government side. So, and now, of course, I'm seeing the private side. And in a lot of things, I was very, very pleasantly surprised the way the private sector does things. A lot of times, especially when I went and met the IndiGo engineering facility, I told them, I said, I wish I had met you before I became the chief of air staff, not after I retired from one. So, the practices are very good. My only thing is, like I want to emphasize on that is, like you said, training and learning. Our children get 499 out of 500 in 10+2. We can't make our own aircraft. Bottom line, we can't make our own engine. Because we are not teaching fundamentals. We are not asking the child to question. You go to any school, normal school, I'm not saying you go to a normal school, greenhouse effect. You ask them a simple question, why green, why not blue? Because see, greenhouse is alien to Indians. Because greenhouses are in UK to protect their plants. We don't have greenhouses. हमारे बाहर उगते रहते हैं आराम से. So you are not telling them to ask the right questions. And the second thing is, I agree with Pieter, regulatory environment has to change. The British made rules to rule this country. They said 100 people can be inconvenienced, but one chap should not be able to steal. So it's a joke. Don't. I used to joke when I was the chief of air staff. They said, लड़ाई हार जाओ पर 10 रुपए की चोरी नहीं होने देंगे. You can't work like that. Trust, but verify, like it always said. And please prosecute. If somebody has done something wrong, prosecute. Your problem is we are not prosecuting. Because we are not prosecuting, other people are encouraged to do the same thing. So that is, if you see the pulse of the problem, मैंने बहुत खून के आंसू बहाए हैं, because I know how projects have been timed and how has it affected our operational preparedness. So I think we need to have a relook. It's a fantastic vision. Yes, we need to go there. Aspirations are there. But the things that will take us there need a serious relook. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Trust but verify. We have to reach there from the present situation of distrust and crucify. So that's the journey. Luckily, our corporate laws are being amended to decriminalize what should never have been crimes, but were made crimes in the Companies Act. Thank you very much for those.
Sir, since you allowed the Air Chief, a former Air Chief, a comment, maybe you'll indulge me also. I'm Sanjeev Agha, independent director, retired. But I'm just taking on, this aspect which he mentioned that, you may get 500 out of 500, but you don't think you can't. Now, this is well documented, well understood. But recently I've come across another aspect when you compare, say, India with a country like China, we developed very fast, is that when you have, let's say, a 20-year-old entering the workforce in China, and I'm going back to 1990, 2000, when we used to consider them very poor quality workmen. Now, today, I heard the L&T MD once talking of a Chinese worker, much as we used to think of a German worker in 1960s or a Japanese worker in 1990. And this is not a different human being. It's the same human being who was a lousy slipshod worker in China in 1990, who's now become top class, perhaps the world's best. So whether you are a teacher or you're a scientist or you're a worker or a manager, having joined, being continuously challenged, having continuous opportunities to do better, and if you don't do better, you get left out. It's a very healthy balance, is something which I think is there. I don't know too much about China because I have not spent a lot of time, but having got two industry leaders here, maybe I just want to push this thought in their mind as to how their workforce, even if they're doing, it's not related to promotion, but it's related to continuous improvement. So if they join at 20, they're someone, and when they join at 50, they should be the best in the world. So I just want to, that's another area of development.
I think the panelists are saying noted.
So thank you, Mr. Elbers, Mr. Sarma, for a very absorbing session, and thank you, Mr. Damodaran, for being the moderator. May I now request Mr. B.S. Dhanoa, ex-Air Chief Marshal, to please present a memento to each panelist. On behalf of each panelist, Excellence Enablers is proud to have sponsored Education for One Girl Child for 1 full year through the NGO Nanni Kali, a Mahindra initiative. Once again, thanks all the dignitaries for joining us on stage.